are live, so we'll wait a few minutes for people to come in. And good. And we're recording. We're good to go.
Oh, excellent.
We have another 2 minutes before we start and get everybody in here. So how have you been?
Crazy, busy. But
How's your house? What's going on?
So we're hopefully, well, our deal fell through. So I was telling you. So it's okay. You know, the buyers were equally disappointed. Their transaction or their mortgage didn't go through. Which I feel very bad for them because they had spent the money to go through inspections and, you know, hire their lawyer and stuff like that. So I just wanted to say to them, I can't wait for you. Like, I have to put this back on the market, but if you come back, it's yours, right? Like, you know, but we can't wait. And,
No.
you know, you just feel like, okay, you know, it was just circumstances and it's nobody's fault. Well, it's the mortgage broker's fault, but it's
That's so upsetting. It's just, oh my God. I mean, upsetting for you, for them. I mean, especially when you start to go, okay, we're good. Like, and mentally, the deal's closed for you. Right. You're moving. You're like, I'm out.
But you know what was great? It was the look on my kids' faces when you say to them, all right, look, the deal fell through and we have 4 showings scheduled for tomorrow. And they're like, are you kidding? I have to clean my room again? I was like, yeah.
I can't imagine keeping my house clean to that level, because it really is a certain level that you keep your house clean when you're doing showings.
Yeah. It's 8:25. All right.
All right. I will start with introducing. I'm talking with Ayesha Hamilton, and she's the owner at Hamilton Law, and she focuses her practice on employment law. And if you are an employee somewhere, Ayesha is the one you want to reach out to. I'm the owner at First Steps Financial. My name is Alisa McCabe, and I have a team of dedicated accountants and advanced certified QuickBooks Online Pro advisors. And we help small businesses simplify their processes, organize their financials, and gain insight through technology and strategies. We have everything that we talk about today is for informational purposes only, and the content is just for your entertainment. Today, we're talking about how do you own your financial independence, even if you're not the breadwinner. And Ayesha and I have, friends that we know who they've kept their finances separate for 50 years. And that really sparked us to start talking about this. Like, how does this work? And everybody does it differently. So I looked up a few statistics on it, and I thought these were fascinating. It says 90% of women will be solely responsible for their finances at some point in their life. And I can attest to that. I mean, I was a single mom. So yeah, it was all on me. By 2020, women are expected to control 72 trillion or 32% of all wealth globally, up from 51 trillion in 2015. And there was another statistic someone was saying by 2029 that we will actually control the majority of it. And this one was disturbing. 75% of women in male-female relationships will be widowed by an average age of 56.
Alisa, we don't have to kill them. I mean,
oh my God, they die on their own.
Right. And you think about just divorce, right? I see we have Amanda Trigg joining us again this morning, and she's this fantastic divorce lawyer. And what, you know, I imagine that what she sees in the clients, whether, you know, probably mostly women who come to her and say, okay, kind of blindsided, I need a divorce lawyer. I didn't see this coming. And the first thing they've got to do is figure out what the marital assets are, right? But if we don't even know that, right, you don't have your bank account logins, right, for the online banking, and you don't know where the retirement funds are, right? And you don't know if the husband has additional credit cards. I mean, that's actually a very scary place to be, on top of either dealing with having to probate your husband's estate, right?
Yeah.
If he died, or if he's gone, right? If you're in the process of being divorced. Just
And
nuts.
and I had a client who her husband died suddenly
Oh,
and young. I mean, he was riding his bicycle and he hit a pothole and he died. There was no other car involved, nothing. It was just, and he was young, vibrant. She didn't know anything. She didn't know what to do. I literally had to go to her house, and thank God he had it so organized. Literally spreadsheets, everything was on Quicken. I was able to help her and come up with a system for her to take over. She didn't know anything. And so
right.
even for that reason alone of not knowing, like anything can happen,
Right.
and knowing what's going on in your finances. And the other thing that Ayesha and I were talking about was I told her how many times I get approached by professionals, women professionals, doctors, like who've asked me, can you teach me about finance?
Mhm.
Because it's something that we as women don't embrace as often as maybe we should.
Right.
I think we leave it to somebody else to do it. We're probably intimidated by it.
So one
Uh,
of the things that I like about you, Alisa, is that you simplify the concepts, right? You make things, you sort of break it down to, look, this is the stuff you need to know. So what are the things at the very, very basic level, right? At a very fundamental level, what are things that we should know and have recorded somewhere on a spreadsheet, maybe,
yeah.
about our personal finances?
Well, I think everybody should, if you're in a relationship with somebody and you're both supporting a household, whatever you're doing, you should be sharing all the financial information. As in, you should have access to all the bank accounts and be able to know what's going on, how much spending is happening, and have those conversations about what you're going to spend your money on. And if you have somebody who's a spender and that's just who they are, create a situation where it's not an issue. I actually have somebody who I know who her husband he has a slush fund. There's like a couple $1,000s in it every month, and it's just his to spend on whatever he wants. And she's not even the breadwinner. It's just something that they both agreed on. He doesn't want someone to go, oh, what'd you spend that on? What'd you spend this on? So you have to be very careful. You have to have some healthy communication about a lot of these things. And knowing where the spend is, knowing how to access the accounts, having joint accounts, really are the basic bottom line things that you want to have available.
So you brought up joint accounts, right? And we've both had examples of people that we've met that don't have joint accounts, right? The husbands and the wives maintain their own bank accounts. Their income goes into those bank accounts, but they then sort of tally up expenses and just make sure, then they're contributing to the household finances. My reaction to that was, back when I got married in 1998, that would never have occurred to me.
Yeah.
And you made an interesting observation. You said you also took your husband's last name.
Yeah.
I said, yeah. And I wondered if there was this correlation between just you're in that kind of mindset, and you're like, oh, well, I mean, we're married, it's joint, obviously, but you have a different situation, right?
Yeah. So in my situation, I was married before, and we had everything joint together. And then, I got divorced, and I ran all the finances, so that it wasn't a discovery for me. But there were some things that I messed up, in the sense that my first husband was getting a pension. So I didn't put money away for retirement. I thought we would live on the pension. When he retired, we would both live on it. So lesson learned. So when I got married the second time, I was a single mother. I had a house, and my husband to be had a full-time job, but I was only working part-time and able to maintain my household. And when we got married, we still just did joint everything. We didn't separate anything because I felt like we both came in on equal footing.
Right.
So again, I think it's, and I was talking to this, this topic with my husband, and he said it's an intensely personal decision
Yeah.
that you need to make.
And
And so,
I wonder if it's a statement of, I don't know, like a statement of trust, but also a statement of independence, right? Like,
mhm.
maybe if I had gotten married at a point where I got married the week after I graduated from law school, my husband was still in graduate school, right? So we were still kids, we were still
Mhm.
sort of student oriented. But if I had gotten married maybe 5 or 10 years into my career, I might
Yes.
have got a different perspective.
I I think so. I think that if you were established enough, because you both, I think again for you, you felt like you were both coming in on equal footing. You were poor college students, so
We had
you didn't have
nothing.
anything. And I think you're right. I think if you have some things, or maybe you need to feel independent, and by having your own money, I have a friend who she always had her own money, and she didn't even work full time. She worked part time, but that money was hers, and she put that money aside. And so if she went to buy gifts or do something else, and I have another friend that saved, like, her husband, he supports the family, and all her money she saved, and she saved so much that they bought a beach house,
Mm.
the
Wow.
money that she saved. So it's like, I don't know. Again, I think it is that personal thing.
And
I
I
don't
think
know.
one of the so if you find yourself at a point now where you don't have that information, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I know where the bank account is because I see it on the check, but I don't have to log into the online account, right? And I'm not necessarily, because a lot of bank accounts now allow you to opt out of getting paper statements. So
Yeah.
you're not even seeing something come in the mail, but that makes it even more important for you to have online access, right? You have to be, you can't sort of dig your head in the sand about this. Um, Maybe one of the best ways to sort of sit down and engage in that conversation
Mm.
is to start an estate planning conversation, right? Is what if something happens to you? I really need to know where this stuff is, right? I need to
Yes.
know, not after you're gone and got hit by a
Mhm.
car, um,
Yeah.
where everything is. And I think it's a really reasonable conversation starter. It's
Right.
uncomfortable. You don't want to have to anticipate someone's death, but it's
Right.
what
But
you're
even if
planning
you,
for.
yeah, if you feel uncomfortable having the conversation because you don't want to bring up any issues of mistrust or something, I think that's an excellent way to do it.
And actually, Amanda just made an excellent point. She said COVID is a great, great
Yes.
reason. So absolutely right on the mark, Amanda. And I
Ah.
tell you, this is again from the divorce lawyer who spends all of her time having these
Figure it all
conversations,
out.
right? But I think that's incredible. Is yes, especially in this time of a global pandemic,
Yeah.
it, just from a practical perspective, if you don't know how to log into the bank account, if you
Mhm.
don't, I mean, if you don't know where retirement funds are, right, that's
Yeah.
very scary.
It is. And also it could also be that opportunity to start on some of the basics that and this is a business or a person, everybody should have, like, create a budget, save a specific percentage of income, even the profit from your company. You should be putting aside a certain amount, and even if you do have separate accounts or joint accounts, you could talk about how much are we going to save from each one of our accounts. Build an emergency savings account, because I'll tell you what, if any business right now had an emergency savings account, it got them through this time.
Yeah.
And who knows what's going to happen in the next year? And I cannot strongly encourage, you have to have an emergency savings account as an individual, and I believe more so even as a woman,
Right.
because it's something that you can rely on. I had a friend that was in an abusive relationship, and she was afraid to get out of it. And so she took as much money as she could and she gave it to her father to put in an emergency fund for her, so that when she did leave her husband, that she and the kids had money that they could live on. So,
That's a
you
very
know,
real thing. Wow.
yeah, it is. It empowers women. When you have money behind you, it makes you stronger. It makes you feel like you have more of a voice. So, and then you need to have, invest in something that meets your goals and risk tolerance. That's the other thing that you need to start thinking about at this time. um, and I love the COVID talk is, how are we going to invest in the future? And women think about investing so much differently than men. And you're going to have to figure out how to make your voice heard if you are investing with someone else,
Yeah.
especially if your partner's a man. Um, or actually anybody. I can't even say that, because if you're in a relationship with a woman, she's probably going to have a different opinion than you have.
Right.
So, you have to figure out what that looks like.
And actually, the mutual friend we were talking about, right, who sort of has had a 50-year marriage at separate
Yeah.
bank accounts. Um, One of the things I love about her is she is, as a woman, financial
Yes.
planner, I think is the term. But she also works with other women who cater to women and educating them about investing and educating them about financial planning issues so that they are never caught
Mhm.
in a situation where they either didn't have a voice or they didn't have any idea of what was going on. And so I think that's important too, is as you think about how you approach these conversations and
Yeah.
thinking about who you're going to invest with, also make sure that the personality
Oh,
and the objectives of the financial planner you're working with match yours. I think
yeah.
it's really important to realize that um, not everybody ultimately has your best interests at heart, right? So,
And it's true. And women are actually really good at investing because they're a little bit more conservative. But and women invest differently in the sense that it's never just about investing money. A lot of women tend to focus on conservative, but also things that give back to the community. And so I think that it's an interesting approach, and to find somebody who has the same ideals that you have. And more of these, there's actually funds out there that you can invest in that are, you know nonprofits, and they use a good group of do-gooders, and you can invest in those. But finding someone who understands your approach, um, and I think, our friend is actually, she's a good person to talk to.
right. So I'm going to tell you a funny story, right? So probably the only times that my husband and I ever argue about stuff is money, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably true of a lot of couples. Like you're really sort of like irritated arguments are about either spending or just sort of like mostly spending, right?
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
think that once we started having conversations about finances and understanding sort of where each side was coming from,
Hmm.
you have we don't have those arguments anymore, right? And some of it was sort of the lack of confidence on my part. So once I started my business, there were years where I was not bringing in the kind of money that he's bringing in working in corporate America, right?
Right.
So there's that sort of self-perceived, this is not anything he ever did, but this is in my head a self-perceived disparate level of power, right? And
Wow.
so I was creating these arguments in my head that absolutely had nothing to do with him. And I tell him he's not watching, but I apologize now.
Isn't that interesting that we are putting the power that we have we equate it with how much money we make
That's
in
right.
a relationship.
We
So we
always
like,
do. Right.
wow.
And we don't do enough to then recognize that while I was still starting this practice, I was still also a mom, right? And I was taking care of all of that because who
Yeah.
else was going to do it? He went off to work,
Right.
right?
You were the main caregiver,
I
and
was
we
the
we
caregiver,
don't value that enough too.
right?
I think that because there's no monetary number attached to, raising kids and doing a freaking good job at it,
Right.
it we kind of negate that and say that that's not as
Right.
valuable.
And one
And
of the reasons that my business worked, right, and being a business owner, right, is if someone needed to be home because the plumber was coming, that was me,
yeah.
right? If someone needed to be, I was the one doing the parent teacher things, though he tried to attend that, but you're really, sort of like the primary on tap parent,
Yeah.
home organizer, all of that, in addition to trying to start your own business. And I never gave that value because
Oh,
it never in my head equated to a monetary figure. And
no.
that's wrong. We
I
should not,
know.
we shouldn't devalue our contributions.
And I don't, and I think we just do. We don't think about it. My daughter, who's in law school, told my story back to me in her words, and I almost cried. I was like, "Oh my God, that sounds really good."
Right.
She was like, single mom, started her own business when her youngest of 6 was a year old. And I was like, "Damn, that sounds really good."
You're kind of a rock star.
And I'm like, wow. But never once in my mind did I equate any of that with power or look what I've done. Or I've never, I don't know. I
No,
think
because we
we as
don't.
women, yeah, we don't. Again, this goes back to our other discussion about tooting our own horn
Right.
and not realizing the value. But I think here it's really monetarily driven. And I think it's very interesting that we have to legitimize our power and our voice
Yeah.
only when we've made enough money.
So I think that I love what your daughter did. And
Oh,
I think that we should all do that, right? Is go ask someone who's close to you and your family, who's watched the process, and have them give you the narrative of your life, right? It could take a
yeah.
minute, but it's nice to sort of see what other people see in you, because I think we as women are the first to put ourselves down,
Yeah.
to be critical of ourselves, right? Someone will say to me, wow, that dress looks great on you, and I'm like, oh, but it kind of, I don't love
Or I
this
got it.
look, or I don't
I
love
got it on.
that.
Yeah, I got it on sale. It was like $5. Yeah,
Exactly.
you
Why
got to
do we do
downgrade
that?
it. Yeah.
Right? All that was required was a simple thanks. I
Thank
love
you.
it. Right?
No, totally true. That's an excellent idea. We women need to start telling our stories to each other and
Yeah.
telling and retelling your story. And I think that a lot of people don't know people's backstories.
Right.
And how did you get to where you are? I mean, um, Amanda posted, my mother-in-law is a total pista, taught me that no is a complete answer, and so is thank you. I
Oh, I
love it.
love it. I love it.
And it is. No is a complete sentence. You do
Yeah.
not have to say. And I do think that we do try to, you
Yeah.
know,
It's always, oh no, because. Right.
yeah.
And I will tell you, anytime I've said no and just left it at that, the world didn't explode.
Oh,
Nobody died, right?
yeah.
But I have walked away feeling like a shit. Like I have
Oh,
walked away and like, oh my gosh, I should have explained. Do you think they just think I'm being mean? I should have. But Amanda's right. No is enough, right?
yeah.
And
It's
it's
true.
not like that relationship ended. It's
No.
not like they never came back and asked me for another thing. It's all my headspace.
Oh. If we can just clean out our own headspace.
Exactly.
I think it would be nice if we had like storage rental. You could take that thought and like put it
Just
out
dump
here
it,
and
right?
go get it when you need it. Like, okay, got to go to the pod and pick that up, put it back in.
Exactly.
Jason actually, Jason, our business lawyer on here, actually had a really, really good point about when you own your own business. And it's funny because I own my own business and there's nobody else who's an officer or owns any part of my company. Ayesha, does anyone own part of your company?
No one can own part of my
Well,
company
right, because you're a lawyer.
because I'm a lawyer, and a lawyer cannot be in partnership with a non-lawyer. But I would tell you, and maybe this is just my perspective, that unless someone was in some way contributing to my business, in some way helping share in a piece of the pie, it would take a lot before somebody else had their name on my company.
So, but he brings up the point is if something happens to you, no one can access your bank accounts. Nobody can access anything. And I know that when I opened my bank account, I don't know how many years ago for my business, I had an exceptional banker. He is just outstanding. Mike Luthi at Berkshire Bank. I love him to pieces. He was like, you need to put someone else's name on this so that in the event that you die suddenly, your employees can get paid and your business can at least continue until someone can take it over, it can be sold, whatever.
Right.
So I thought that was interesting. And so, talking about being independent about our finances, we also have to think about, what happens if something suddenly happens to us and how does that transfer?
No, I'm living forever.
That's my goal too. I'm looking at about 100.
Yeah,
So
that's
again,
right.
and one of someone on my team actually said to me, they said, I think Alisa thinks that she could do any of this by herself, and it's true. I always have this conservative spot that if I had to, I could do this all myself, and it doesn't, like, money wise, I always make sure that we have 3 to 6 months of savings,
That's right.
because I want to know that if something did happen to my husband, I could still continue. And that's where my security comes from. Instead of it being financially independent from him, it's just being, I guess, financially independent from the world.
When also none of us saw COVID coming, right?
No.
Now,
Yeah.
I've always operated on, I have at least 10 months in the bank, right? And so
Okay.
as I have seen COVID hit, as I have seen clients come back to me and say, we need a different retainer agreement because we are having financial issues, I've been able to accommodate, right? I've also been able to give a lot of free advice because in this point in time, people are getting laid off, people are on unemployment, and frankly, they cannot afford me. But I just think it's what we do, right? Is if you can help, you help. It's a quick
Yeah.
phone call, you jump in, and that's what you do. But I couldn't do that if I had 1 month in the bank, right? I would be panicking
No,
right now. What
no,
to do?
you would be desperate, and desperate is not good. And that's, and if that's one thing that we can leave every woman with is, make sure you do have your own money. Make sure you do know, your finances. And if for some reason you're in a relationship that you can't have the conversation, my friend who was in an abusive relationship, like, make sure you secure yourself financially, and even if you're not, like, in a point where you're comfortable with it, always be able to strike out on your own and have all those things. We have about 3 more minutes. And I just wanted to talk about, so I love this conversation about finances because me, it's close to my heart. But we're going to continue this conversation next time. And Ayesha and I are going to talk about what mistakes we made financially, both business and personally, and what we wish we could have told our younger self. And
I got a lot to say to my younger self.
there's going to be quite a few things that we're going to talk about with that.
Yeah.
And if anybody has any further questions about any of these subjects and wants to reach out to us, you obviously can message both of us. Jason piped in back. He is talking about he made for businesses. He has clients that he's just made the spouse an officer in the company and put in the bylaws or operating agreement that the officer can act if the company president is unable.
I think it's a great point. But I still can't get out of my way of thinking about, well, what happens if you're going through a divorce, right? And now this person has an ownership claim on something you built.
Yeah.
And likely they have some claim to it anyway, because they were home doing something while you were doing something else.
Right.
But even having a role as an officer, right? Is there, I worry about what that opens you up to.
Yeah.
And I mean, it may open you up to nothing,
Right.
between lawyers, we can argue anything.
That's true.
Right?
That's very true.
Any
I mean,
position.
and it's funny because Amanda and Jason are going back in the chat about, doing this. They're actually going to talk to each other and get it worked out. Let us know what happens. Because,
Yeah.
it's a really good point that they bring up is,
Succession planning is what.
Yeah, and not giving up a piece of your business that you built. Although I do have to say, I own 49% of my husband's business. We did start it together. I used to work in the field, in the electrical field, when he needed me to. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And my husband would be like, here's the directions. I'd have to go and figure out how to put in an electrical outlet and stuff.
Oh, I love it.
So it really was a partnership. And then I just
really
realized,
the coolest person I know. It's so cool.
well, thank you. That's very kind of you. I think you're quite awesome yourself. So I look forward to talking to you next Thursday.
Yeah.
Have a good week. And we will catch up then, and maybe your house will be sold by then.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
All right. Take care. Bye.